Hello everybody, my name is Zach. Welcome back to another Deck Tech. Today we're doing Kagemaru First to Suffer. He is 3 and 2 black. His power and toughness are always equal to the number of cards in your hand, and you can pay 1 black and sacrifice him. They have all creatures -X until end of turn, or X is the number of cards in your hand. Now, it's a pretty straightforward deck. It only has 3 ways to win. This deck loves having a big hand because Kagemaru is actually, well, he's one of our win cons. Really beefy, so I run tons of equipments in the deck. Now, some of them sort of Feast and Famine, sort of Fire and Ice. They're pretty straightforward cards. You put them on there, they give you an advantage, it's whatever. I'm mostly focusing on the other cards that are actually a little more important than those swords at times. The first one being Lashrid. It's 4 mana, living weapon, so when it comes out, it creates a 0/0 germ token and equips itself to it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each swamp you control, and the equip cost is 2 Phyrexian mana, meaning you can either pay 2 life or pay a black. So if you play this and it taps you out, you can pay 4 life to put it on Kagemaru, and he'll get +1/+1 for each swamp you control. Generally, it's at least giving him +4/+4. The later it gets in the game, the bigger this can obviously make him. We do run an Orborg that turns all of our lands into swamps, so it allows us to make him fairly large. Now, we have a few equipments that give lifelink to Kagemaru. One of my win cons is Aetherflux Reservoir. And so giving Kagemaru lifelink makes it so we can attack with him, and even if they block, it gets us quite a bit of life. It also does help when we're paying life to things like Necropotence and all of our draw spells are damaging us. It's nice to have a way to get that life back. So this just gives equipped creature Death Touch and lifelink. It's 1 mana to play and only 2 to equip. I'm still testing the color. I might pull it out at some point because it doesn't do much on its own. After that, we have Batterskull. It also has living weapon, so it creates that 0/0 and equips itself to it. Gives equipped creature +4/+4 vigilance and lifelink. Now, the vigilance is pretty nice because we can attack with our commander and still leave him up to block if, say, our opponent has a big, beefy commander as well. You can also pay 3 to bounce the Batterskull to your hand. Now, the equip cost is pretty hefty at 5, but it hasn't steered me wrong before. And even if your hand size is a little bit low, you can at least swing in with a large commander, and then he's a deterrent to most things that'll be attacking you. Now, I don't run Lightning Greaves because of all the other equipments that I run, and I run very few creatures in this deck, so I won't generally have something else to put the Lightning Greaves even on. So instead we run Swiftfoot Boots. 2 mana, it gives a creature Hexproof and Haste. The equip cost is 1. I think paying that 1 extra mana is pretty negligible. It's not really that big of a deal. And 1 pair of boots is fine. We can tutor it up if we really had to. Now, most of the time we're going to have more than 10 cards in our hand anyways, so we threw in Grafted Exoskeleton. It's a 4 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has Infect. Deals damage to players in the form of poison counters and creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters. The way Infect works is if a player has 10 or more poison counters, they lose the game. So if you get Kagemaru to a 10/10 and hit a player with him, they die. That's actually about it. Also, if for whatever reason it becomes unattached from a permanent, you have to sack that permanent. So if you attach it to your Kagemaru and move to attach it to Runescarred Demon, well, Kagemaru is going to die. It's not that big of a deal. Generally, you're going to keep it on the Kagemaru. We have Nim Deathmantle. This is one of my favorite equipments. It's 2 to play. Equipped creature gets +2/+2. Has Intimidate, meaning it can only be blocked by 2 or more creatures. And it's a black zombie. Whenever a non-token creature you control is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you can pay 4. If you do, return it from the battlefield to play and attach the Nim Deathmantle to it. And normally its equip cost is 4 anyway. So what you can do is sacrifice your Kagemaru. He'll die killing everything on the board most likely. You pay 4 more, and he comes back, and he's ready to do it all over again. His cost isn't really going, well, yeah, he's not going to the command zone, so his cost isn't increasing. So it's just a straight win-win. You can also put it on your Runescar Demon or something if you wanted to, and then sacrifice your Kagemaru, and then your Runescar could die, and if you wanted you could bring back the Runescar instead if you need to tutor for something. So, all around, it's pretty nice. Alright, now we get into our other win cons. The first of the two is Aetherflux Reservoir. 4 mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. Then you can pay 50 life, deals 50 damage to target creature or player. I've never had an instance where I've needed to kill a creature with this. Generally you're going to play with 3 other players, so your goal is generally going to be 50 to all of them. This is where the next couple of cards I'm going to show come in handy. This is also why I like giving Kagemaru lifelink, because if he's massive, he can gain you a lot of that life in just a couple of turns. Now, maybe not enough to kill someone, sometimes enough to kill 1 player. Generally not more than 1, with just Kagemaru. So, the first one we have is Alhammarret's Archive. It's 5 mana. If you would gain life, gain twice that life instead. And if you would draw a card except for the first one you draw each turn, draw twice that many cards instead. So, you play your Sign in Blood. Well, instead of drawing 2, it draws you 4. You crack a memory jar, instead of 7 cards, it draws you 14. And so on and so forth. All the life gain off the Aetherflux Reservoir gets doubled, so that starts to get a bit ridiculous and awesome, actually. And you can kill people much faster, you can get all the cards that you want for your Kagemaru. Makes it a lot easier to beat people to death with Kagemaru. All that good stuff. We have Ivory Tower. It's a 1 mana artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain X life, where X is the number of cards in your hand minus 4. So 10 cards, you would gain 6 life. And you combine Ivory Tower with Venser's Journal. 5 mana artifact. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 1 life for each card in your hand. Oftentimes, I want the Venser's Journal over the Ivory Tower, so if for whatever reason you're tutoring for one, get the Venser's Journal. It gives you no maximum hand size, so if you Necropotence, it will, on the following turn, it'll start paying for the Necropotence and netting you a bit of life. Once again, works very well with the Aetherflux Reservoir. It also just keeps you from killing yourself through drawing cards, you know, with Necropotence and all that. This card oftentimes I play when the Reservoir is out. Yawgmoth's Will. 2 and a black. Sorcery. Until end of turn, you may play cards from your graveyard. If a card would be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, it does exile instead. Which is fine, because usually the turn you play this card, you are winning the game. If a bunch of your mana rocks are dead because someone Vandal Blasted, well, you just play them all out again. You can play a land from your graveyard if you want to. Oftentimes I just start playing a bunch of my draw spells from the graveyard as well. But yeah, Yawgmoth's Will, it's an absurdly powerful card. Exsanguinate. This is really only in here if the game goes really long. We don't have that many mana doublers in here. I may eventually add an Arcana Revenant. For now it's just Crypt Ghast and Extraplanar Lens. Exsanguinate is X and 2 black. Each opponent loses X life, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. I mean, once again, if you're close to the end, your opponents might be somewhere around 20 or 30. So if you can get that high, good for you. As I've said, this is just an alternate win con if the first two... If you can't kill with Kagemaru, and if you're not able to kill with the Aetherflux, you have this. Then we just have a couple of decent lands in here. Most of them are self-explanatory. You know, Cavern of Souls can't be countered. Orborg makes all your lands into swamps. This is Glacial Chasm. Generally you're playing this if things aren't quite going as well. If, say, you don't have any of your draw spells or your tutors, someone's made you discard your hand. Cumulative upkeep, pay 2 life. Meaning, at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a counter on it. They're age counters if I remember correctly. And you pay 2 life for every age counter on it, otherwise you have to sacrifice it. When it enters the battlefield, you do also have to sacrifice a land. Creatures you control cannot attack, but you prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. However, anything that says life loss will still make you lose life. Anything that says target player's life total becomes 10 or something like that, those will still affect you. Anything that makes you lose the game will still affect you. It does, however, keep things from dealing damage to you. Now, players can still attack you if there are effects they want to get off of their cards. But as I said, you can leave this out there for just a couple of turns while you're waiting to get some of your draw spells or just something you need, or rocks or whatever you need, and then you can let it die once it is no longer necessary. And finally, we have the most important land in this deck. Well, one of the most important lands, which is Reliquary Tower. You have no maximum hand size, and it only produces colorless. No maximum hand size is very important for Kagemaru, as we like to draw a lot of cards. I think I have about 3 things in here that keep you from having a maximum hand size. One of them is Thought Vessel, the other one is this card, and the third one was Venser's Journal, which also gains you life for the cards in your hand. Now there is one other win con you can add in here if you want to, and that's Exquisite Blood, Sanguine Bond. I thought I had it in here, but apparently I don't. Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond, I forget which one does what, but one of them is whenever you gain life, target player loses that much life, and one of them is whenever a player loses life, you gain that much life. So you have both of them out. They're both 3 and 2 black to play, and they're both enchantments. So you bring out both of them, and you gain life, or someone loses life, and you just instantly win the game. Generally, you do it when you have something that will allow you to gain life, or you can play Sign in Blood on an opponent, and that ends the game, because they will infinitely loop with each other until you win. So that's Kagemaru. He's really strong against creature-based decks. He's not quite as effective. Well, I mean, against decks that have no creatures, he can just attack repeatedly. Some people will run things like Pithing Needle, stuff like that. While it does stop you from activating the effect on Kagemaru, and the only way to get rid of that is with the Oblivion Stone that we're running. Pithing Needle's not the end of the world. You just, change your strategy a little. It's a fun deck. It's straightforward. I haven't gotten tired of it yet. I've been playing with it for a few weeks now. But it is a good choice if you're tired of, a lot of the mono black commanders are all just Reanimator. There are no Reanimate cards in this deck. This deck has nothing to do with Reanimator. The closest thing would be Yawgmoth's Will, which I don't count that, really. But yeah, most of the decks I'm going to be working on from here on out will probably start being 5-color decks. It's become a bit of a pain to try and build every single commander deck. So for now, I'm just going to build every 5-color deck. Currently, we are working on Storm. Now, it's 5-color Storm, so there's not going to be a Yidris involved. So it takes a little more effort, but so far, it's looking pretty good. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you in our next video.